Hello and welcome to Sethaldor's World of Warcraft Guides. This one is going to be our PvE Frost Mage specking, So, gonna go over this fairly quickly, hopefully. First off, I would recommend not going Frost for raid DPS because, at least in my experiences, it does not have as high damage output as Arcane or Fire. However, it is fairly fun to play. So, first what we get is Summon Water Elemental, which lasts forever now, or until death, in which case you can just resummon, similar to a Hunter's Pet or a Warlock's Pet, which is nice. Before you had to glyph for that, now not so much. Next we get Frost Specialization, which increases frost damage by 25%, similar to the other two. And finally, at level 80, we get an mastery ability called Frostburn, which causes all spells to deal 40% increased damage against frozen targets, increased by 2.5%. So basically what you want to do is you want to make sure the target's frost novaed, or you have Fingers of Frost, or is somehow rooted by a frost effect before you attack it to get your mastery bonus. Hence why it is not going to be as good versus bosses, simply because you cannot freeze bosses. Now, again, this is a PvE spec. Keep that in mind as we talk about the talents. So we are going to look over a fairly large amount. I may do a second Frost spec. This one will be for damage output and things like heroics. And then the second one might be like farming spec, AoE farming, grinding mage spec. Go ahead and leave a comment saying if you're interested in seeing that or not. If there is any response at all, I'll do it. Might even do it if there's no response at all. So, first row we've got Early Frost, which reduces cast time of Frostbolt. Basically, it'll be your first Frostbolt, and every 15 seconds, that next Frostbolt will be reduced by 0.6 seconds. Not bad. Faster cast time, always a good thing in a PvE situation. Faster you can get those bolts out, the higher your DPS will be. So definitely want to take that. Next we have Piercing Ice, which is 3% crit chance. No reason to not take that. And finally, in the first row, we have Shatter, which will increase the critical strike chance of spells against frozen targets by... Well, it multiplies your crit chance by 3 with 2 points, and also increases damage of Frostbolt done by 20%. I should also note that patch 406 will be coming out soon. Patch notes are up. Please check out my blog, Sethaldor's Games and Guides, on blogspot.com to grab a link to the 406 patch notes and see some of the interesting stuff that I've put up there, at least as far as my opinions and some of the stuff that caught my eye. So you want to look at that. So some of this may be changing, not too much of it will. A lot of the changes to mages was damage percentage increase and decrease, and mana cost increase, decrease. So next row we have Ice Flows, which is definitely a good one as it reduces the cooldown of a lot of your medium-sized cooldowns, such as Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, Ice Block, etc. You can see them all there. It does it by a percentage as well, not a flat number, as these things have different cooldowns. So, pretty good. Let's finish looking at the row first, though. Improved Cone of Cold is nice. It will cause targets to be frozen, similar to a Frost Nova effect, for 4 seconds. That's pretty good. But again, bosses can't be frozen, and I've noticed a fair bit of raid trash cannot be frozen either, so keep that in mind. Next we have Piercing Chill, which causes Frostbolt to apply chill effects to more than one enemy. And we have Permafrost, which will increase chill effects, slowing by X%, and also your water elemental will get healed by damage you do, and it's kind of like a baby Mortal Strike as well. Which would be more PvP over PvE. So really, the second row, the best thing for a PvE damage output Frost Mage would be Ice Flows to help the cooldowns be up more often. Slowing multiple targets, not that big of a deal. Improving the slow on the targets. Healing your water elemental, not that big of a deal. Freezing stuff, not that big of a deal. Tank should be able to hold you. So you want to go back and fill out Shatter 2 of 2. Next row we have Ice Shards, which adds a chill effect to Blizzard, and also it's on its own movement speed reduction thing. And also it increases the range of your Ice Lance spell, which is definitely not a bad thing. But range usually isn't that much of an issue in PvE, so I'm going to hesitantly say that's minorly leaning towards PvP. Still has its place in PvE, but again, Frost is one of the awkward ones to walk into a raid or heroic as DPS. Icy Veins, very key cooldown. It's a shame that the other two specs can't gain access to it simply because it's in the third row, but it is what it is. Take Icy Veins, 20% increased casting speed, obviously a good thing. Also, the 100% pushback resistance is a good thing as well, especially if you know there's an AoE coming, pop that, and you don't lose your DPS. Next talent you have to get if you're going to be a Frost Mage by every stretch of the imagination it is required. Basically, anytime anything with a chill gets cast on the target, you have a 20% chance to gain Fingers of Frost. Pretty much, it makes your Ice Lances and Deep Freeze hit as if the target were frozen. And if you recall, we grabbed Shatter, which multiplies your crit chance against frozen targets by 30%, as well as increases Frostbolt damage by 20%. However, Fingers of Frost does not affect Frostbolt anymore. It used to in Warlock. So basically, when you get Fingers of Frost, you want to throw Deep Freeze and spam Ice Lance till you run out of Fingers of Frost. Another change to note from Warlock to Kata is now when you do Fingers of Frost, you do not get a 2-stack and work down. You actually have to build up to the 2-stack and then burn that down, or just use the charge as it comes. It's a little disappointing. It devalues Frost Mages even further than they already were. In my opinion, Frost Mages have not been as good as they were since BC. BC Frost Mages were pretty effective at what they needed to do, and then Watlick came around, just kind of nerfed them, and then Cataclysm really hasn't done anything for them. Improved Freeze gives your Water Elemental Freeze a chance to give you 2-stack Fingers of Frost. This is nice when you know you need to put out more DPS, or simply just do it every time Freeze is up, do so. Freeze is basically, if you're a Fire Mage and you're looking at Frost, Freeze is your Blast Wave, only think of it as a Frost Nova instead of a Blast Wave. You click it, then you choose where it happens, and it gets executed. However, if your Water Elemental is either despawned or incapacitated in some way, shape, or form, you will not be able to do this. It is also based on the Water Elemental's range to where you want to place it, not your own. This is primarily optimally valuable with all 3 points in it, so expect to backfill. Also, the target, I believe, does need to actually get frozen by this to get the proc. If you just put it and it hits the boss, but the boss isn't freezable, I don't think that it'll give you the proc. Feel free to correct me on that. Next row we have Enduring Winter, which reduces mana cost, always a good thing, and also your Frostbolt provides replenishment. Pretty good, especially for raids if you're going in as Frost Raid, even 5-mans. Cold Snap is nice. It allows you to automatically finish the cooldown on all Frost spells. I primarily, personally use Cold Snap when I get Fingers of Frost. I'll do Deep Freeze, Cold Snap, and then a second Deep Freeze, because Deep Freeze does a ridiculously large amount of damage, which is going to get knocked down by a fair percent. I think about 20% maybe. I think the damage of Deep Freeze will be dropped by about 20% in patch 406. Feel free to correct me on that. Again, check out my blog, Sethaldor's Games and Guides on Blogspot to catch a link to the 406 patch notes, or go to the Blizzard site and check it out there. Next, we have Brain Freeze. This is similar to the Talent Hot Streak if you watch my Fire video. Basically, it stops the triggering of arcane missiles, and instead, all Frost spells with chilling effects have a chance to make your next Frost Firebolt an instant cast. So, similar to the Fire Hot Streak, which made your Pyroblast instant, Brain Freeze will make your next Frost Firebolt instant and free of mana. This also, if it's an instant cast off Brain Freeze, can benefit from your Fingers of Frost, which is nice. Unfortunately, Frost Firebolt cannot trigger Brain Freeze, so you can't, say, get a chain of Frost Firebolts. This used to actually be a DPS loss till you had the appropriate level of gear in Warlock. Now that is not the case. It is indeed a DPS gain, regardless of how you look at it. There's a large emphasis on a lot of instant casts for Frost, which is interesting and makes it all that more appealing for PvP over PvE. So if you want to play as Frost, keep in mind that you'll be doing a lot more optimally in a PvP scenario. Need to put one more point, feel free to grab one of 3 Enduring Winter and backfill. The reduced mana cost is absolutely wonderful, but I'm going to go 2 of 3 Improved Freeze at this time. Next year we have Ice Barrier, which we have to take to grab Deep Freeze. It also helps with your survivability in a raid environment, which is always a good thing. It's good to help out your healers. It's not super expensive, but not super cheap as far as mana goes. Fairly easy cooldown. Does get reset by Cold Snap, absorbs a fair bit of damage, and I believe you can glyph to have it absorb more. These two talents that spread off of it are interesting. Excessively grinding and PvP related, not so much raid environment related. Shattered Barrier will basically cause your barrier to do a type of Frost Nova effect after it gets broken, minus the damage component. It will only freeze them in place. That is nice in the event that you get aggro, but in most raid and heroic scenarios, the tank should be good enough to hold off of you, especially with the limited damage that Frost does now, again, which is disappointing me. So Shattered Barrier is nice if you are grinding or PvPing, but does not have as prominent a place in a PvE scenario. Reactive Barrier is interesting as well. Basically, it will automatically cast the spell for you. It does obey the cooldown. I don't believe it starts a GCD, and it does not cost any mana. Basically, it casts your Ice Barrier for you if you get dropped under 50%. Which is, it's like, oh, that's cool, but, I mean, it's not that hard to click the extra button. If you, again, it's really PvP related more than PvE. You shouldn't really be dropping under 50% if your healers are paying attention in heroics, and in 10 and 25 mans, if you're dropping under 50%, frequently enough to need this, then question your healers, question your strat. If you do drop below 50%, it's probably part of the fight where it's intentionally happening. So again, not a very prominent PvE talent, unfortunately, however impressive you may find it. At which point we need to spend 4 points to get to the next row. Max out Improve Freeze, that is 1, 3 more, grab Enduring Winter, 3 of 3. Next row, we only have one talent to look at, but it is quite an interesting talent, Frostfire Orb. Basically, your Flame Orb now is Frostfire damage, so it'll do frost damage if the target's more resistant to fire, fire if it's more resistant to frost, etc. It's basically turning Frostfire Bolt into an orb that you throw at them. It also gains a chill effect at 2 points, reducing the target speed by 40% for 4 seconds. Again, more of a PvE-esque thing, as reducing movement speed of bosses generally doesn't actually happen. And also your Frostfire Bolt's chill effect is improved by another additional 20%, which is nice, but not uber amazing or impressive. Go ahead and put 2 in there simply because the Frostfire Orb will cause your frost bonuses to apply to your orb, which is a good thing as far as DPS output. Now we have 3 points to spend in talents that I don't want to spend them in. All the more reason why they have seriously done something awkward with the Frost Tree. Ice Shards is very attractive as to what we have to choose because the Ice Lance range is nice. Plus, it's always nice to have the slowing effect on Blizzard and AoE scenarios because tanks sometimes have issues with AoE aggro. Proof Cone of Cold is interesting, if not fairly unattractive. Piercing Chill, again, interesting, but fairly unattractive for a PvE scenario. And Permafrost, not bad, because there are mobs that heal, so having the Baby Mortal Strike effect isn't bad. Healing your Water Elemental by doing damage, again, not a bad thing, saves you mana so you don't have to resummon him. And chill effects being improved, again, not a bad thing, but not exactly the best thing either. So at this point, I would say really put these points wherever the heck you want them to go. There's not really a bunch of good spots. I'm probably going to grab the Ice Shards for improved Ice Lance, and then either 1 of 2 Cone of Cold or 1 of 3 Permafrost I would recommend. Probably grab 1 of 3 Permafrost. Then grab Deep Freeze, which freezes the target in a Spire of Ice and does ridiculous amounts of damage if targets are permanently immune to that. While they're frozen in Deep Freeze, the Shatter talent is absolutely active, and your Ice Lances will treat it as if the target is frozen, because the target is indeed frozen. With these 10 points left, I would actually suggest leaving Permafrost 1 of 3 for a little while, because, I mean, even with my OCD, it's just the talents left in Frost are not that appealing for PvE damage output. So let's hit Arcane. We have the 3% haste, which you absolutely need, and hit the fire, 2 of 2 Master of Elements. I would say Netherwind Presence, Master of Elements, Piercing Ice. That is the first row talents that all mages should get, and then if you have enough points, also Arcane Concentration, and Arcane is absolutely wonderful. So at this point you have 2 unspent talents. You could go backfill Permafrost. I would recommend avoiding Improve Fire Blast. You shouldn't be doing Fire Blast. You could do 2 of 3 Burning Soul if you'd like to reduce pushback, not a bad thing. You could grab Invocation, again, not a bad thing. Don't grab Improved Arcane Missiles because you have Brain Freeze. Improved Blink is a PvP talent, ignore it. This is interesting. Actually, in Watlook, that was actually not a bad idea to actually hit 3rd row Arcane and grab Torment the Weak, because it said increases damage done to slowed targets. Unfortunately, now it says Arcane damage done, so it is now no longer interesting in any respect for Frost Mages. So these last 2 points, I guess I'm going to go grab Permafrost, simply because there's nowhere else to really worry about putting them. So this is a Frost dungeon running, questing, if you really, really love Frost, raiding spec, I guess you could say. Again, I would say if you're planning to do raiding and heavy heroics, avoid Frost. You're not going to be doing as much damage, but I personally love this spec, and it hurts so much when Blizzard decided to say, no, this is not going to be competitive with Arcane and Fire, but it's their game, not mine. This is a 6233 build, as you can see. Thank you for watching. This has been Sethaldor of the server Blade's Edge in the Guild Sacrilege on the character Arctic Shatter on the topic of PvE Frost Mage raiding and instancing. I guess that'll be kind of the title of this video. Spec. So, again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and favorite. Go ahead and leave a comment letting me know what you'd like to see next, as far as maybe the next set of class guides or different types of videos. If you'd like a rotation on this guide, go ahead and ask. I did one for Fire because someone asked. If you'd like me to do rotations for previous classes that I've done, go ahead and ask that as well. So yeah, again, thank you for watching. Really fun to make these videos for everyone out there. Please subscribe. Please check out my blog at sethaldorsgamesandguides.blogspot.com. And see you guys next time.